overview of Ozone 10. I had actually used Ozone 9 to master this particular project right here. This, as you can see, is a stereo mix. I recommend using Ozone on its own. Like, for example, if you're using Cubase, make a new Cubase project just for the mastering and try to set it to the same BPM that your original multi-track version was in if you have a different version. Because I think some of the mastering aspects work better when they're synced to the same. There's actually like timing things that relate to it. So anyway, on your master or stereo out bus, I guess you call it, just on your main stereo out, do is you insert Ozone 10. So on Mac, it looks like audio units, Izotope, Ozone 10, stereo. And it should look like this pretty much by default when it first opens up. But I also want to point out that you should make sure that you have Audio Lens installed, and Audio Lens came free with Izotope Ozone 10 Advanced. So it might be if you can search your applications, you already have this, and if you don't, sign in to Ozotope and then search for Audio Lens, and you should get basically a free download of it or a free, an update that includes that for free, basically. And Audio Lens is a separate program from Ozone Advanced. So what it looks like is this. It looks like this kind of icon, and when it opens up, um, it actually looks very simple like this. Okay, and this is really cool. This was new that it works. It works with only Isotope Ozone 10 Advanced and higher versions in the future. Um, and it's just a reference tool that is really cool because you can reference audio from any source on your computer and just play it through, even if you're online on YouTube or Spotify. Although if it's an app like Spotify that you're referencing from, make sure that you look at its settings, that there's no extra EQ or compression or normalization going on in your settings of listening as a listener. YouTube would be the most neutral, I think. Then again, YouTube from distributors, might have toned it down to minus 16 LUFS. So maybe in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and use YouTube as an example. So I'm going to go to YouTube and say that I want a Coldplay song to reference, and say that I want this one, Music of the Spheres live. And pardon me that you won't hear the music audio on this video recording. It's not really necessary for what I'm trying to explain. So what you do is you start this from capture on Audio Lens. So you click capture. It's waiting for you to play something. And over here, I'm going to bring this back to the beginning and start playing. And then hit stop after you've recorded a good amount of it, but you can really record a whole song up to, I think it goes up to 3 minutes or something like that, or 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So then once you click stop, right away, name it something. So in this case, I'm just going to call it Coldplay. Um, Actually, I'm just going to call this live example for now. I might delete this later because this basically sort of switched on me. But it doesn't matter. For this purpose, the idea is that it captured a whole audio profile, and it's not capturing the actual audio. It's just capturing the information that's all the analysis, which can be basically morphed back into uh, Ozone 10. So you click save, and now there it is. And the reason I like to see these other examples, in terms of naming convention, what I'm going to be doing is when I have something like orchestral, I'm going to do ORCH hyphen. I'm going to try to put the artist, I mean the composer or producer's name, and then the name of the track because, um, and in some cases I might do a whole album, so put like the album name and then the name of the track. And the reason is because these all sort, as you can see, by like alphabetically. And so later you'll be able to see kind of good categories. Like I'll be able to easily see my piano referencing categories, for example. So anyway, that's it. I already captured it. I already saved it there. I can close out or quit Audio Lens up here on Mac. I go to this and quit. I forget how to do it on PC. But anyway, now I can move out of the way the browser where I was sourcing that from. And keep in mind, you could have been playing that from any source. So you could have even, if you're able to play a CD through your computer, it could have gotten it from that. If you were able to play iTunes or Spotify or anything on your computer, you could have captured it from that. Now, on Ozone, um, there's a few modes. This mode here means that you're going to actually play through your audio that's over here. And so in my case, um, what I do is I find the loudest point in the audio. So you would have to find out how to do that on your own DAW, such as Cubase, for example. You really want to find the loudest point and put a marker at that point and get it exactly to that loudest point. And when just moving this out of the way for a moment, moving Ozone out of the way, and turning Ozone off right here, like basically muting it or turning it off. When I press play from that loudest point that I found on my track, watch, I'll play it. And on the track itself, the loudest peak point in my whole pre-master was minus 8.4, which is already low enough. It's almost too low because ideally you want that to be like minus 6. So if you wanted to, you could put some gain on it to make it so that that peak point equals exactly minus 6. But in the example of this soft piano track that I recorded, it tends to work really well actually when it's even lower, like minus 8. But the loudest you want your peak to be is minus 6. So just make sure to get it to that point at the loudest point of your song. And then when you first use Ozone, it has a mode where you can just let the master assistant, which is this circular thing here, not this view, but this view. When you click on it, it says waiting for audio. So at the point that I press play, and again, I apologize, you won't be able to hear this, I don't think, but when I press play, it goes through a process. And when it says all systems go and it shifts to something, a view like this, um, it automatically detects something about a genre here, which is pretty mind-blowing actually. And then it also shows you like this whole curve thing, but I just want to point out the main features of Ozone. Um, this tab gives you what are called modules. Each of these separate things are modules. Think of them all as individual plugins. And as you can see, the Master Assistant, like just by itself, no reference audio, does all kinds of things. So for example, the first thing it did was it added this pretty complex EQ curve. It has this other thing called Stabilizer, which is like another really expensive software called Gullfoss by another company, which now Ozone added it into this, which is incredible. Let's see what else. And Dynamic EQ, Imager, Maximizer. Maximizer should always be to the far right. So if you ever see you add in a new module and it pops into the right here, just move maximizer always to the far right of everything. And then it has additional modules that you could add in. And for example, one that's really cool called Master Rebalance. Remember, always move them to the left of the maximizer. And these actually have ability to boost vocals or bass or drums. It has to be only one that you choose, that whichever one you think is lacking basically in your mix. So if you felt it was lacking some bass, then you could boost the bass and choose this, right? But here's the cool thing about these modules. You see these little triple lines that are on here? Those are what you click to get presets, and I highly recommend just checking those and trying their presets. So for example, if I wanted bass booster, watch what happens to this and this when I click bass booster. Switches to bass is the thing that's being boosted, and it puts some gain on it by 2.4. But it's not as simple as like, it wasn't just like an EQ boost on the bass range. It did something really uh, integrated that it won't really mess with the other parts of your mix. It's almost like you're able to remix from the master in subtle ways. Another one I love is called Crispy Drums. So now you see how it went to the drums, and it has some kind of boost on that. And just try these out while you play back your mix. And if you want to mute it, this is when this is blue, it's on. When it's white, it's off. So you can kind of A/B back and forth like that with it, with an individual module. And also you can solo only the module happening so that you're not hearing all these other ones. Just make sure that when you want everything to be working together, that only the blue of all the modules that you're using is on. And don't make sure you don't have, for example, some of them have a solo by mistake, because that means, you know what I mean? Like it means that then your other modules might not be functioning in the when you export your music. Okay, so um, I highly recommend playing with presets and close this out. And then if you look at even impact has presets there. So look at that. You can test different main presets, and when you click them, say that I use like transient tamer, for example, watch what happens in the body of this view, because this view we see right here pertains to this module that I've highlighted, that I've clicked on. So if I click, like, let's try hype it up. Watch, I press hype it up, and now all these elements are altered. So by just clicking on different presets is a great way to kind of see and listen to how this functions. And you can be doing these while you're playing your track back on the timeline, and you'll be really hearing a difference. The other thing you can be doing is you can put gain match on over here, just so for the sake of like, you don't hear the normal loudness difference between the mastering mode and not, and with this off. So that way you'll hear with gain match, you could be turning this off and on basically, or just hitting bypass like that. And then when you bypass all the mastering, you'll hear your original pre-master. When you put that back on, you'll hear the mastered version, but not at its full loudness yet, because you'll just be hearing an equal volume and only the tonal differences. So that can be useful, although I have to admit, I usually don't use gain match, and I usually like to hear that the whole loudness and everything all at once, just from while I'm mastering it. Um, Now, all of these modules, including additional ones that you add, like say you put Exciter on, slide it from before Maximizer, they all have different presets. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool thing right there. Another thing is that even on the whole mastering, like if you want to just get an overall total preset for everything, you can reset everything from all of these presets up here. This is like a global preset, so this wouldn't even require me doing that thing where I did the math. This is the master assistant where it listened to from my loudest point for about, I think it's 20 or 30 seconds, or maybe it's only, maybe they've changed it to only do about 5 seconds now because they kind of sped up everything in the process, but on this version 10. But before, I was using Master Assistant, and um, let me see, how do I reset this? I'm wondering. I forget how to reset. Oh, here we go. See, relearn. The relearn is like a reset for everything. So this is like starting again from scratch. So I have my loudest point in the music, Master Assistant, and I could press play and have it analyze it again and adjust everything to my pre-master like it did. But if I wanted to, instead of even using that at all, I could even just start out with any one of these presets. So it's pretty cool if you look at all the um, different options. So check this out. If I just put general clarity, like click that and close, then now it just started with some kind of um, general clarity setting. So, you could really play around with just like trying these out and seeing you could play it through like this. So you press play and go through the different ones. I could switch this to this and literally switch it while it's playing through. I could go to mix bus, center channel energy. You know what I'm saying? You could just be picking all kinds of, as you can see, these all branch out to different things. So there's all purpose mastering, added warmth. So you might actually learn a lot from trying these main things and just observing what kind of settings it gives you on each of the modules that this preset puts in. And if you notice, the preset just has like a set of modules, and in this case, it happened to be a very vintage type of thing for added warmth. Um, so you could learn a lot from that. But once again, if I go back to this, or actually, oh yeah, you can also be tabbing through them like this. Um, Now, if I X this out, I'm on the circle and I exit out. Um, I'm trying to get back to the part that said relearn. Default. Maybe default. Maybe I have to stop the music. Okay. Here we go. Here's another learn thing. I think this is another research. Oh no, yeah, this is a different learn. I can't really explain these ones. That's something that, say you're playing it, and at the moment that you're playing it, you press learn. Some of these will adjust. Well, in this case, they're not adjusting, but sometimes you'll see these things moving around as it on its own while you learn. But I just don't know what other adjustments to make after they settle into some new position. There's some other adjustments you can make with all these that is something beyond me. Okay, let's see what else. When I go back to this, okay, this is basically ready to. Another thing you can do is you can X these out just to make it a really blank template. That's another way to clear things out. And then back to here, I could put this back and I could learn again. Now, um, there was this thing about those audio references. So if you just start out by um, letting the master assistant analyze it like this, now I can stop the music. I stop my music. And again, I apologize that you probably can't even hear the music in this video, but um, so once you set, once you play Master Assistant through to let it play a few seconds to get this kind of curve look and this display, that is, as you can see, it's under this tab of this sphere, this colorful sphere. You're going to have this thing here and this one here, and check that out. This one is for references. So if you notice, it's got my references that I did from that other program called Audio Lens, and that's the benefit of that, is that when you use Audio Lens to grab any kind of audio curve that you like from any source, it's able to integrate it in here, and I can literally just press this, um, and now it's got the curve. When I go back to this tab, I can see that these modules are all everything that Audio Lens learned from listening to my own other track when I played it through on Audio Lens. And then, of course, I can listen and see, do I like it, and do some other adjustments. The other mode that was in here from here are just these sort of template genres. So even if it identified and thought this is jazz, I could switch my piano track and I could put it, see, well, what does it sound like with a country curve on it? Or electronic dance music or whatever, any of these specific ones they have. And I like that they included cinematic. I mean, that could be useful for so many things. So you have two main modes about overall sort of reference presets. One is genre presets right here, which is this 3-line thing. And then this wave icon symbolizes anything that you've targeted. Now, even if you didn't want to use Audio Lens and you want to just directly add an actual audio file from a reference, when you're on this wave icon, again, look, we're on this sphere, and we've seen this left column, and I switched from these genre themes to the wave. And from this mode, I can add, this is how I used to do it on Ozone 9. I would add something like Coldplay or whatever the reference was from here. So this will let me browse for an audio file. So for example, I could go to Coldplay and this, and then I open it, and then it will be listed here as the one that's currently, that it's adapting to. So yeah, that's the main thing with referencing, like you getting references in. Remember to always switch back to this mode, this tab right here, so that you can then start getting into the different modules and trying different presets. And some references will not have this many modules like in here. Like sometimes you'll only see equalizer, dynamic EQ, and maximizer, or something very small, something very simple. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the thing about targeting and LUFS. Once you've got the overall sound the way you like it, you have to be on the maximizer, not any of these modules, but the maximizer here to do the target referencing. The stereo independence in most cases just works better when it's not. This would be independent. Like so, in this mode, you would actually want to bring both of these up to 100%. If you really wanted sort of the targeting of an LUFS to work very independently from the two channels, left and right. However, that was at 20, and this was at 20 on this particular example. I recommend always clicking this to make sure it's linked, or seeing that it looks like that linked. And the other thing is sometimes you won't see true peak highlighted, and make sure that you see it's highlighted as blue. On Ozone, everything when it's on, it's blue, and when it's off, it's white. It's a little bit tough. That was tough for me to get used to, actually. So blue is on, linked, and true peak is on. Now, when you learn the threshold, which means having it target a LUFS, you have to play it from the loudest point in the song, which for me is right here. And then you have to double click inside here and type the minus LUFS you want. So say you wanted minus 9.5. You would just type that in and hit enter. And then you would, and do all of this while the music is not playing. Everything has to be still and silent. Then hit learn threshold so that this turns on as blue. And what you're going to see adjust is I've already set a true peak ceiling of minus 1.0 dB, which is that's kind of a standard now for all the streaming stuff. If you wanted it to be more like CD level, you could actually play around with putting this at minus 0.4. That's the level I've seen analyzed when I've analyzed stuff like the highest rated Taylor Swift pop song or whatever. Um, and then you make sure to turn back true peak. You can adjust this when this is on, but I think it's a little more, it works either way. It doesn't matter if this is on or off. But when you're about to target learn threshold, you put this on blue and true peak on blue. And again, I recommend keeping the transient and sustain as linked. So it's actually not stereo independent, really. And sometimes you'll see your references will bring these to different levels. So these two do not always equal each other. Um, I don't know much about that technically, but you probably understand that more than I do. So anyway, you'll notice that when I learn the threshold, it's going to do it very fast. And it's going to most likely adjust this threshold to be something else. I'm going to guess a little bit higher, but we'll just see. So I press play, and there it goes adjusting. And And as soon as you see that this turn from blue to white, it means it's already done and it turned off. And then just keep it white from then forward, because you don't turn that on again, because things will dynamically move with this whenever this is blue and you're pressing play. So now this is like locking it to turn this to white. And if you notice, it actually gave, I guess because I gave it such a high, loud LUFS, it's functioning almost more like it's giving it more basically dynamic range between the threshold and the ceiling of this. So that's sort of interesting. And then you'll also notice you have this thing called soft clip, and I highly recommend that you play around with using this. I love on Ozone that when you when you hover over something like the letter H, it says that it gives you a description. Sets a heavy soft clip shape that begins saturating 30 dB below the threshold. Middle, a moderate soft clip begins saturating 9 dB below the threshold. And low. So I just have a feeling like you'll get some really interesting results by playing with these. You could put this on low. Well, first of all, you have to turn it on to blue. Then you could change this to low. And play it back like while you're playing this. Make sure that this is white, that this is not going to dynamically move again. And you press play. And while that's playing, you can switch these. And you can listen to how they're sounding as it plays back. And you might discover you get really interesting effects. Then another thing here is that you could raise something about these levels. So when you bring these up, I guess these like adjust the amount of this soft clip. Okay. And then whenever things are sounding like very much like where you want them to be, or even if it's getting there and you know that you're getting close to having it the way you want it to sound, go to this top pull down and use Save As and title it something dot auto a I don't know how this ending is gonna look on PC. It's gonna probably be some VST preset, or I forget what the term is on PC. But on this, you just give it a name. So maybe I could call it like uh, MH demo preset, like that, and then I save that, and then I now could get back to this whole setup later just by going back to my preset right there. Okay, so then what you would do is with Ozone on, so make sure that you see this blue on your stereo output with everything the way you want it to sound. The maximizer has already been adjusted and adjusted the threshold to your LUFS that you want. You can even X this out as long as you know it's still on. And at that point, you could bounce your track. So I don't know on Cubase how you highlight the regions, but on Logic, for example, I have exactly this part between the cut to the end. And then in Logic, I use bounce, project, or section, and it now that's showing me the exact lineup of what I highlighted on the WAV file. And actually, I would be doing it in other things like 24, 48, or whatever mode I had been in for the audio file, and then I would click OK and then give the file name. So I don't know how it works in Cubase, but basically, I think in Cubase it's file export. So with Ozone on and this gain adjusted to wherever you had needed it to be either -6 or lower for the pre-master peak point, um, you should be able to go file export and get the master that you need by exporting the file with Ozone on, and that would be how you would do the final output of that file. So I hope I covered the main basic things. Just try to remember that sometimes it'll look confusing. Sometimes you have to switch from this mode to this mode. That's a big one. Remember that these can be overall global presets that you could switch to. So this is really cool stuff that's in here, I think. If you try those presets, you can then um, take a look at all the module settings that they come to, and as it plays back, here's Imager, for example. This is very cool to me that it shows a polar example, but I can also get these other modes of viewing. Those are just view modes. This is pretty cool. Recover sides. Um, so there's so much you can look at and kind of analyze and learn from, and so much you can get from all the different presets. And so have fun with it.